Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I've known Jim for 20 years professionally, and I can say and proud to say as a friend. And I will say, as an exec, he was the busiest exec that always had time, always amazed me. And another thing I'd say about Jim, in a way, he's really one of a kind and perfect for the topic today. And I think one of a kind, and I think all of us would really like that not to be the case. So I'm really privileged that Jim's here to spend some time with us. And Jim, given you've always been, since I've known you, you've been oriented around the commitment to diversity in all its forms. And that was long before it had hit the executive agenda as something we ought to be doing. Can you say a little bit about your world that had you be oriented that way?
Yeah, I sure will, Doug. And thanks for having me on. I always appreciate having an opportunity to talk about this subject. It's always been real important to me. And I think the fundamental belief for me is I've always believed in teams. I'm an old offensive lineman, leave the ego at the door. I've always believed you're much stronger as a team when all the team members are rowing the boat in the same direction. I've always said if I hadn't gone into engineering, I think I'd have been a football coach. I've always loved the idea, embraced the principle, the power of bringing a group of individuals together and to be able to do better than any individual could do. To me, that's always been such a big, my belief system. And it's at the end of the day, it's all about people. And when you can bring that diversity and inclusion, and that inclusion is a huge game changer. Years ago, all we ever talked about was diversity, and really was a bunch of numbers game. When we started talking about diversity and inclusion, it really fit my model of how you bring a team together, set the bar extremely high, create that environment where everybody has a seat at the table, challenge the organization to do better than any individual could achieve, and have fun and celebrate successes. So, and I'll talk about this more as we kind of get into some of the questions. As a transformational leader, when you create this environment, just get out of the way. So that fundamental belief in teams was just a natural fit for me to believe in having diversity, inclusion, and bringing that team together.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Jim, was there, when you say that, is there a particular instance or two where that was really, there was a real challenge, and it included bringing, the whole of something together like that across different boundaries? Any particular one come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, the one that you and I both shared in was our major project in Russia. It was the first major development in the Russian Far East, coming in, not understanding culture. We had lots of different contractors of many different cultures, huge challenge on just every aspect of a project you could imagine: cost, schedule, safety. And it became very clear that to be able to be successful in that sort of environment, you had to bring everybody to the table. Everybody brought different experiences, different knowledge. There was a lot more people that knew about working in Russia than we did. So getting them a seat at the table was critically important. Building that team spirit, creating a vision of what we could achieve together, and then living that vision every day, and then seeing it happen. I mean, it was a great petri dish for all the things that I've believed in about leadership and about transformational leadership, about teams, about diversity, inclusion, to where we were very successful at the end of the day. And it just, once again, solidified that belief in people and solidified the belief in inclusion and diversity.
Yeah, you remind me, Jim. I don't know if this is going to sound odd to you all listening to this, but Jim, I always watched you be colorblind, gender blind, uh, nationality blind, culture blind. And it always amazed me because you're, on one hand, we're like two regular guys, but you operated that way and it gave you a certain outlook. Anything you could add to that?
Yeah, it's a perfect opening to talk about the whole inclusion word. Diversity, because you're working international project, it's just a truth. I mean, it's a very diverse background. And then when you bring in the word inclusion, to really be able to bring people that have the knowledge and experience to the table. I've always believed it's a pretty simple three-step process at the end of the day. And as the audience is listening, I want you to, when I talk about this, just reflect about your own experiences in the workplace. And so this simple 3-step process all starts with step number 1, which is involvement. And how do you feel when there's an issue or there's a problem and your boss gets you involved, wants your knowledge, wants your experience, you have a seat at the table. So it starts with step 1, involvement. And when you get involved in that problem solving or developing that solution, you develop a natural ownership in the solution.
Mhm.
And that sense of ownership then leads to a sense of commitment. And when you can do this across a team, wow, the power is incredible. Just get out of the way. So, but it takes a lot of effort. You mentioned about me having time. You have to have a level of engagement to get people involved. So you have to sacrifice some things. But if you'll just practice that and think about your own experiences when someone got you involved in a solution, how that developed a sense of ownership. And then once you have that sense of ownership, you're committed to the vision. And once you're committed to the vision as a leader, just get out of the way and help knock down barriers. So it really is about that inclusion piece.
Yeah, that's great. And could you say something specifically with regard to women in the
Yeah.
workplace and the way in which you conducted yourself?
Yeah, happy to. To me, being an ally for women is pretty natural. And it's natural for me for 2 reasons. And the first reason is my mom. I've told this story when I'm out in the circuit quite a bit. My dad, who was in the U.S. Army, was a command sergeant major, lived through World War II in the Pacific, lived through the Korean War. And then when he was 40 years old, he joined Special Forces and he went to Special Forces school, graduated. This is 1961. He was most likely going to go to Vietnam. But dad got killed in a live fire training exercise. And so mom was left with 3 boys. And this is my Italian mom left with 3 boys, 4, 7, and 9. And seeing the strength of my mom, she had so much pressure to move back to our home state of New York. We were living in Clarksville, Tennessee. But mom said, no, I want my boys to come up and grow up in Tennessee. I don't want them to grow up in New York. She went to work, civil service. She was just the rock of the family. She never sacrificed anything for herself. It was all for the 3 boys.
Mm.
Put all 3 boys through college, the first flood boys to graduate from college, all 3 with engineering degrees. So when I think about my mom and me having kids, she's always been an angel to me. And I always joke how she didn't smother us in our sleep. I'm not sure at the end of the day, because she was always there for us and she was a rock. So seeing the strength of my mom, and my mom believed in inclusion. She treated everybody the same. And she taught all the boys the simple golden rule. Treat everybody like you want to be treated. And it's really I know it sounds so simple, but if you just practice it, it's just amazing. So mom was the foundation for me. And then the other reason, I think it's pretty simple. I have 3 daughters. And I've seen so much of the strengths of my 3 girls, their ability to interconnect with people, how smart they are. And just as our mom taught us, we have taught our girls, you can be whatever you want to be. There are no boundaries. And so for me in the workplace, then it just became easy to be an ally for women and to be able to provide a bit of both opportunity and access to me from a mentorship perspective. And so to me, it's always been pretty easy at the end of the day for those 2 reasons, Doug.
I love it. And I mean, you just remind us how we can get shaped by our experiences like that,
Yep.
and then live them
Yep.
like as a truth. And you said you used the word mentorship there just now. Can you say a little bit about some of the forms of your support of the world of inclusion?
Yeah, it's easy. To me, I was lucky to be in this executive position for 11 years, which allowed me a lot of opportunities to work with our young leaders. I've always believed I had great mentors coming up in the organization. We didn't have formal mentor programs back then. It was mostly probably having a beer somewhere, but just having that experience to be alongside some of our senior leaders and seeing how they took leadership to the next level. I mean, it was really important to me. So I always said, as part of my payback, I have to give back. And I've always believed that mentorship is so important. And really, that mentorship I provided to everybody. A lot of it was our young leaders, and whether they were women or men, no matter what the diversity was, it was always important to me to make myself accessible. I think if you ever talk to my admin, Teresa, she would tell you I would do about 150 plus mentoring meetings a year. And if you looked at my calendar on a weekly basis, you'd see 3, 4, 5, 6 mentoring sessions. Tended to be very informal. I had a bit of a methodology working with our young leaders about being able to kind of put storyboards together and kind of where they want to be in their career. It would maybe only last 30, 45 minutes. Gave them a chance to ask me questions. It gave me a chance to share and coach. I've been able to coach and teach a lot about the aspects of transformational leadership. And Doug, you know that better than anybody. We've been partnered with Lumeri for many years in coaching and teaching the whole aspects of transformational leadership. And I think those sessions, I've always gotten great feedback from them. But I would always tell the young people, I got so much more out of that than I think they did at the end of the day. But to me, that was really important. And when I'd travel around the world, I would hold these mentoring sessions, spend a lot of time with our early career professionals, share some knowledge, share experiences, do one-on-one sessions, doing workshops around the world. But those were kind of my main avenues to kind of be able to coach the whole strength and importance of inclusion, diversity, and transformational leadership.
Jim just reminded me. I remember one time Jim called me and said, listen, I got this group. I want you to come do a workshop, like 2-3 hours, you and I together. It'll be great. And then the time comes and the day before I said, now remind me, what's this on? He said, it's one of our employee resource groups. And I said, oh, I know what they are. I'd love that. Let's do it. Then he said, by the way, they're the Asian employee resource group. And I said, okay, is there anything I need to know to be able to be of value? He goes, nah, we just need to go in there and be with these people and love them up. And love them up, you said to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I was sponsored for our ACE, our Asian diversity group, for about 6-7 years. And having worked in Asia for many years, Japan, Korea, India, China, I mean, it was a great chance for me to be able to work with that organization and see them grow and grow exponentially with both ACE membership, allies, and it was a lot of fun and extremely beneficial to me.
Yeah, that was great. And I got to tell you, same as you said, I got more out of it
than
they could possibly have gotten out of it from us.
I got it for free too.
Yeah, we've done a few of those. Jim, if you, I really appreciate you talking about your mom that way. And if there was a message that you wanted to get across first, by the way, and you also, I know you were talking about early career professionals here. If there's a message you wanted to get across to first early career professionals about, what you'd want them thinking about or embodying so as to pull the best out of those that are senior to them in the organization in their own attempt and intention to grow, what would the message be to them?
Yeah, some of my key messages has always been leadership does not have to be about organizational structure. You get a chance to step in the door almost on day one and to be able to practice leadership techniques about influencing without command and control, whether you're influencing upwards, peers, downwards, the level of engagement that you can have, the amount of energy you can have. So that whole aspects of leadership, you can actually start in ground zero. So start growing those abilities from day one. And as you go up through the organization, and you grow in the organization structure, that level of influence, that sphere of influence becomes greater. And take it on. And one of the things I've always challenged the mentees is that as you gain knowledge and experience, you need to play it forward. You need to become a mentor. You need to take the time, no matter how busy your schedule is. And I wanted to be able to demonstrate as a VP, I was going to take that time. So as they grow in the organization, start being a mentor, start sharing the knowledge and experience, and kind of continue to play that forward.
Jim, you just reminded me, one time I was talking to Teresa. I was standing by her desk looking for how to get on your calendar that time. And it looked like you had an empty spot. She goes, no. Every time Jim's got a meeting on the other side of campus, and that's one of them, I have to add 20 to 30 minutes each direction, because somebody who he's mentoring or somebody that he's coaching or somebody that just saw him walking with no one else would definitely want to walk up and talk with him. So I got to add that time because it's inevitable. So that when I said Jim was the busiest exec I've ever seen who has time, I was thinking of that, and it was true. And time's a tough commodity for us, we think, but it never got in his way.
I
Jim,
appreciate that.
yeah. So Jim, if there was a message that you would want to leave the women with that are listening to us right now about their either mentoring others or they're still on that path of being mentored, or just what it is that you learned, that what it takes to be a senior woman in an organization today, what message or two would you want to pass on?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, Doug. This one, is going to be pretty. I think people are going to relate to. But early on, I read the Sheryl Sandberg book about Lean In, and I think it's brilliant. And I would tell our young women leaders, one, just take some time, read the book. I mean, because I think it's great background. For me, it was always a bit about, hey, you need to walk in the room with a little bit of swagger, and then that comes that whole opportunity to kind of lean in. You've been through the experiences, you have a knowledge base, you can make a contribution. And that whole, if you believe in that whole value of diversity, of having everybody in the room leaning in, you're just much stronger that way. You have that strength in a team, you have that collective knowledge, you have that collective wisdom. So come in the room with a little bit of swagger, lean in, you can make a contribution right off the bat. And I think I've always tried to help coach and teach that with our young women leaders.
That's great. I was intending that might be closer to the end of my questions, but every time you answer one, you make me think of something else that I've seen you do. So we're sitting in a meeting. It's probably about $20 billion worth of project managers around the room. It was a large project, a couple of them put together that worked together. Couple of projects that fit together. And it was an intense meeting. There was a lot on the line, a lot that had to get thought through, articulated, action plans put forward. And we come to the end of the meeting, and you and I both had a similar habit of checking in with people in the room before we left. There were 3 early professionals in there, 2 women and 1 guy, and a lot of heavyweights in that room. You turned, I don't remember her name, you turned to one of the women and you said, what did you think? How did we do? What would you have done differently in this meeting? And she answered straight out, like, I don't know if she was expecting the question, but she did look a little surprised, but she just said it like she was one of those heavyweights in the room. And this was an early career professional. And I remember getting knocked out by that, by both that you asked her first and that she answered that way. Could you say a little bit about what's on your mind that you would ask that person first?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of the forest and the trees. I mean, there's so many times when you're fully embedded in the solution or the problem set. If you can ask somebody who may not be quite as deep in the weeds, and I almost guarantee what she said was probably brilliant.
It was.
And probably set us back and said, wow. So once again, that's just an example of inclusion, right? Of bringing those people in that have a viewpoint, have thoughts, have ideas, have energy. I mean, I think that's one of the things I love so much about early career professionals. They always had so much energy. And your job as a leader is just to kind of untap that and let it go and get out of the way. In my organizations, I used to try to take as many early career professionals as I could, and then we'd set them up with mentors for the organization, because that amount of energy, that thought without being hindered by any sort of biases after 20, 30 years in the industry was priceless. And it's your job as leaders to kind of bring that out. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. This is like one of those mentoring sessions. I'm getting a lot more value than I think you.
No.
It's a great reminder. Jim, if we ended this session with a message that you would want to get across to people.
Yeah.
We talked about categories of people, but people, what would you want to, what message would you want them to hear right now?
Yeah. Well, for me, as I was preparing for this and thinking about my career, we've done the industry organization has tried to always do the right thing. I mean, all good intent. I think my biggest frustration, and I would challenge the people that are on the webcast, it's about pace. It's about rate of pace. We need to accelerate. You know, I think, and it takes that not only just mentors, but sponsorship. You have to look deep in the organization in the early career and be able to tap people and be able to pull them forward and accelerate them along the organizational timeline. And it takes leaders and it takes guts, and it can be challenging at times. But I've always found that's the best way to be able to accelerate the process and get women into leadership positions. We need to do more of that across all the industries to be able to identify that early talent, be able to set a roadmap for them, and then be that sponsor to be able to pull them forward. Be willing to put people what we call stretch position, challenging positions, and then surround them with talent so that they can learn and be successful at the end of the day. So if I had any sort of challenge to the organization, remember my transformational leadership about challenging, it's about rate of pace. We have to accelerate the whole process to get more women in senior leadership positions.
Yeah, fantastic. Jim, is there anything else you'd like to say in our closing up?
No, I think once again, every morning when you roll out of bed, think about the positive impact and influence you can have on your team, on your organization, and society. I'm a huge believer that a single individual can make a difference. And if you power yourself up in the morning when you roll out of bed, it's incredible what the impact you can have, across the board.
Beautiful.
And thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. And thank you for taking it and for the contribution you just made. And to all of you listening, thank you. Thank you for lending us your ears. And we look forward to your questions.
Looks like we have some attendees joining us. Thanks for joining us for the live Q&A with Jim Flood and Doug Hanover. Please enter your questions in the chat, and we will get to those shortly. Hi, Brett. Hi, Alexis. Hi, Lucinda, Aaron, Lynn, Katrina. Thanks for joining us. Tina. By now, I hope you had a chance to watch the presentation and have some great questions for these guys. Feel free to turn your cameras on. We'd love to see your faces. And if you'd like to ask a question, you can just enter those in the chat. We'll get started momentarily. Hi, Susan. Hi, Brenda, Mickey, Marisa, Melissa. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure you guys have some questions for our speakers, so please enter those in the chat. Tamika, Tina, Susan, thanks for joining us. Brantipa, Mickey, Mai. We'll get started just in a couple of minutes. Just give people a little bit of time to get into the room. Again, if you have questions for Jim or Doug, please enter those in the chat box and we'll get those answered for you. All right, looks like we have our first question. This is a great session, Jim and Doug. Thank you, Jim. Can you share your experiences with your peers in the firm who might not have placed as high a priority in these areas?
Okay, great question. Melissa, you ready for me to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
I talk about this when I think about inclusion and diversity. It's a lot of like other things, and when you're developing in your career, everybody's at a different place along the journey. Everybody's got different experiences. Everybody's got different knowledge base. So just like anything else, it's a bit of mentoring. One of the things I talk about, a big part of transformational leadership is challenging the organization. So I've always felt pretty comfortable as you get comfortable in your own shoes, in your industry, in your company, to be able to do that. If you don't think the pace is right, if you don't think we're doing the right things to really open up the door to get people in, let them all sit at the table and be part of an inclusive environment. I've always felt pretty comfortable challenging the organization. I know it's different if you're brand new to the firm, but for me, it's a bit as an opportunity as you kind of gain that organizational knowledge base skill set to be able to sit there and challenge your organization and have those tough questions sometime and have those tough conversations. Did that hopefully answer the question?
Yeah. Doug, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's right. I think that's perfect.
Right on the money.
Yeah,
All
right
right.
on the money.
We have another question
And,
here.
and by the way, I've
Uh-huh.
seen Jim operate that way. So, what I'm loving, Jim, about you doing this, having this talk with everybody is, I was really anxious for this to be the case for you all. He's not someone giving you some good ideas. He's telling you what he's done, how he's lived, and how it worked out. And I think that makes it really easy for us to all grab on and learn. So thanks. I thought the first response was great, Jim.
Thanks, Doug.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So next question from Melissa. It says, Jim, you mentioned transformational leadership a couple of times. Can you expand on what that means to you?
Yeah, for me and Doug both, transformational leadership has been a journey for us as we've tried to influence our industry, influence our organization. To me, I've always talked about the balance about what I call transformational leadership, which is all about people. And then I talk about transactional leadership, which is really the management skill sets. It's about the systems, the processes, the tools. And what you need to do is do both of them extremely well. But the transformational piece, I always wanted to differentiate from management because to me, it was all about people. It was the ability to engage the organization. It was the ability to influence without command and control. It was the ability to challenge an organization. And when you can create that inclusive environment where everybody feels like they have a seat at the table, you practice the transformational leadership skills, and you almost get to stand back and watch the organization perform. Hope that helps a bit.
Yeah.
Doug, you could do a whole series on transformational leadership. We've had so many conversations.
Yeah, I would add one element to what Jim said. The moniker of transformation it's there to mark that there's a territory that exists on, like Jim said, on the people side, where anyone can have a discussion and can shift gears, open up perspective in a whole new way on a dime. And when that happens, you can tell. I mean, there's a certain energetic response in that person, in the people around them. And it just put the team, the group, the project on a slightly different track, like something else now. The aperture's been open. And that's another way of pointing to what we mean by transformational leadership. Leaders that can have those discussions and have that impact on others, and including themselves along the way.
Great, great. Next question here. It says, there still seems to be a stigma against utilizing workplace flexibility programs. Can you give some examples of how you have encouraged and promoted use of these programs?
Yeah, I'll start. I always talked about when I would be talking to the organization, young people, as they're trying to find a way to get that balance. I always talked about the three-legged stool. I mean, to me, and everybody may have different legs to the stool. Mine happened to be family, faith, and work. And for me to be balanced, I had to have all three. So that whole aspect of family, faith, you need to have time for that. So I tell you what, in these days of COVID, I think workplace flexibility has proven that it can work. The ability to work from home, be able to keep the business running, and sometimes even do better. I was talking to Melissa. I'm not sure with these conferences, when you can have 10,000 people attend, you ever go back to the old way. So I think it's been, if there's one positive out of COVID, it has been how we can work differently and achieve the same or even better results. So flexibility, balance to me has always been a key to be successful at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Next, I love this one. Tina, it says, I really appreciated the comment about walking into the room with swagger. Have you had an experience where that wasn't well received? Sometimes strong women aren't welcomed as equally as strong men.
Yeah, there's no doubt. That's all organizations, all teams are once again in a different place in the journey. But what I've found, and I've worked in some different cultures to where it could have been even tougher for women to walk in the room and be able to have that place at the table. So setting that culture, setting that environment, being that advocate, being that ally, and it may be that everybody's sitting around the room at the table, but there's only a few people talking. So to be able to go across the table to a young person, no matter what the diversity or gender may be, and say, hey, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking? I mean, I love it. Was in the industry for 40 years. For 30 years, we just talked about diversity. When we added the I word, oh, that was a game changer. The whole inclusion and diversity, because that inclusion is different than diversity. It's the whole idea of creating that culture. And you got to be able to knock down those barriers. And there's no doubt in different cultures, it can be more difficult, but you just have to be relentless, set examples, be the leader, bring people in, and so they can share their knowledge and experiences as well. And there's no doubt about it. It is a bit of a journey.
And I'll add, I love seeing somebody walk in with swagger, but then I'm waiting to see where's the value. And so swagger without value is a not a good combination. And by the way, I feel that way more strongly in men for some reason. If I see a guy walk into a room with a lot of swagger, on one hand, I kind of appreciate that because I know what it takes. I respect that, but I got a little bit of my eye out for, is there value behind that swagger? And if there's not, then it diminishes, you kind of, that person in my eyes, in my experience, kind of, I have to admit, I kind of look aside. But to see a woman walk in with swagger and power and then show her value
and back it up,
man, that is that. And I love watching it when I know other men watched a woman walk in with swagger and kind of like wonder, or maybe just kind of shake their head a little. And then I watch her add value like nobody's business. I am sitting there smirking, smiling, at every guy in that room. I'm intending that they just learned a lesson for themselves. So I would keep those two connected.
Yeah, I think that they are connected. Having the swagger plus the knowledge base and the experience is really important. And when you do that, it's powerful.
Yeah.
So kind of building on that, Elizabeth says, be confident is a frequently given piece of advice. When someone doesn't have the technical knowledge or experience to even understand some of the questions being asked, how can we avoid a false confidence that backfires or turns into arrogance?
Oh, wow. Great question. I really think, once again, not only when you come to the table and you're sitting at the table, to be able to ask those questions. I mean, I've been around the table before with a bunch of experts and some people at the table who didn't have as much knowledge and experience. But if you give them the opportunity to ask a question, and they ask a question, and you look around the room, it's like stunned mullets. No one has the answer. It was a great question, but you'd only get that if you came in the room and you didn't have blinders on. So just that whole inclusive environment where I had people in the room who may be able to ask those questions that can move the organization. I mean, it's priceless at the end of the day. So I get you confidence. We want you to have confidence. I think it's then about the culture. If you feel like you can come ask a question, and I always tell people there's no such thing as a dumb question. And if you create that culture, then it's true. There is no such thing as a dumb question. Hope that makes sense.
It does. Shelley says, in these days, we can't walk into a room with swagger, but how can we do that virtually?
Maybe it's the whole lean in thing, right? I'm a big Cheryl fan, but I think it is, once again, about joining the conversation, having that opportunity to join the conversation so you can share your knowledge and experience. And I think that's where leaders have to come in to be able to make sure it is shared around the table and everybody's getting a chance to contribute.
Yeah, I would also encourage people, and I say this to, again, men and women, young and old, if we can disconnect confidence from, I know the answer, and Jim was pointing at that, and I just want to underline it. And I would rather that we have our confidence be connected to, I can deal with wherever the discussion goes. I may not know the answer. And of course, that's also connected to, I did my homework. I know my work. You know what I mean? I have the knowledge of what I've been working on, but I may get a question that's beyond that scope or that level of experience. And I'd love to feel like that we can keep our confidence, that we can be in the dialogue, even if I don't know the answer.
And as a leader, if you haven't created a culture where it's okay to say, I don't know, then something's wrong.
Yeah, great.
Great. Next statement and a question. So this is from Kelly. Says, so glad to have had you advocating for women advancement at ExxonMobil. How were you able to help ensure your peers will continue being an advocate after you leave? After you left?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a great groundswell. Y'all had, I think DC O10 was one of the keynote speakers. DC and I've known each other for 40 years, and DC is a perfect advocate at the end of the day. There's a lot of men that are in leadership positions that are strong advocates and are pushing for the same things that I was pushing for. I feel real comfortable being able to walk out the door and feel like that movement is happening and the momentum is still there. And I was just a little piece to try to kind of help get things going.
Great. So this says, Jim, thanks for sharing your 3-step process. Can you share some tips on how to get folks involved so that they take ownership and make commitments?
Yeah, my best example for that is about safety. We deal with craft when we're doing projects. And at the end of the day, our craft, our workers are the ones who are in danger. They're the ones who are at risk. And if you think about that, I can give them a 500-page manual about how to be safe and require them bang on the table, you need to follow all the rules. Or I can bring them in the room, get them around the table, help them come up with a solution so I can get their knowledge and experience because they're the people at risk. And they develop these solutions where they then develop this ownership. And once you have an ownership in something, it leads to commitment. Safety is one of the easiest ones that I've used multiple times in my career to get craft, be inclusive, get them in the table, have them develop ownership of what we're trying to do. Because at the end of the day, it's their safety that's at risk. I hope that makes sense as well.
Oh, great. Can you share some more about your storyboard concept that was used as a method to mentor others? And do you have any other advice on how to mentor others effectively?
Yeah, for me, as what I'd work with we call the mentees, young mentees at the end of the day, one of the things I do with them is I'd ask them to build a 1-page storyboard about where do they want to be in the future, 5 years, 10 years, pick whatever time frame you want, and kind of draw that storyboard. And that storyboard should include, hey, these are the things that I do well. These are the things that I could do better. And these are the things I need to work on. And then draw that picture about where you want to be and how you're going to go about getting there from an organizational perspective, what roles you want to play in the organization, and then bring that back to me. And then let that be kind of a living storyboard as you go through your career, and you can advance it as you go. You can update it as you go, but it's a great way. No more than 1 page. You can't have more than 1 page, one of my rules. And that storyboard then actually lets you think about it and put in perspective of who you are, where you're at, what you're trying to do, and then be able to kind of see how you're doing over time. It really worked well too. People got a good big kick out of it. Some were much better cartoonists and drawers than others.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Let's see. We're almost out of time, but I have a couple of more questions that I want to get to. I hope you can give me about 5 more minutes or so.
And all the time you need.
Perfect. In your checking in with women before leaving the meeting and asking what she would have done differently for a different outcome, have you had people lock up or not respond or maybe be too scared to respond? And how do you draw those thoughts out of that person?
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies once again about people, the individuals, kind of their relationship within the organization, their confidence at the end of the day. But if you can do it in such a way, that it is within the culture of what you're trying to do to share experiences, I've always been fine. I can kind of draw things out. It may take a couple of questions. It may take a couple of comments. But if you got the right culture, I found that you can do that without too much problem.
Yeah, and I think if you could picture those moments where Jim was in a room with 25, 30 folks, maybe there might have been 4 or 5 women max in that room. And there's this early career professional female. And Jim was usually the senior most person in that room, without question, actually. So he was asking, number one. So it was unlikely that they wouldn't answer, right? They would find something. But here's the key. When Jim asked that question, he meant it. He wasn't like being solicitous. He wasn't following an HR manual where he was told to ask the junior most person first, or as happens in the military. He actually meant it. And the room and the young career professional, and again, often a female, knew it, that he really wanted to know. And I think that scene was set long before that end of that meeting and that question in that moment. And it came out that same way, genuine. And so I think as a tip, it's not a great thing to do without bringing the behavioral part. Really
Right.
mean it, really care for them. And it was his way of nurturing their career and giving them a platform. Jim, would you say something about the young professional you brought in to report out to the president?
Well, Doug and I were sharing some experiences. Doug and I have been working together for 20 years. I had a big project that was in a fabrication yard that was supposed to sail away, and it had to go in the summer season because I worked the Arctic, so you could not transport it during the winter season. And we either had to decide to take it incomplete and then finish it offshore, or finish it, wait one more season and take it out complete. So I had a young engineer who happened to be one of our young female engineers kind of build a model, an economic model to help us make the decision. She did an amazing job, knocked it out of the park. And then when I went to report out to our president, I brought her with me and I kind of kicked off the session and made the recommendation. Then I let her share the model. And I mean, it was an easy decision because she did such a great job with the model at the end of the day, but she got to own it. She got to present it. And I'm happy to say that 10 years ago, that young lady is now one of our leaders in the company. And look, you do those things as a leader. I mean, it is utilized in the organization for everybody's benefit. I mean, it's to be able to utilize all the resources in the best way possible. That is a real skill for a leader. And everybody can win at the end of the day.
Right. And I understand that that young lady is now a leader at ExxonMobil. So
yeah, she is.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
and Melissa, I'm sorry, just to add, I've also seen Jim do the opposite. Now, he wouldn't do it publicly, but I've seen him take a young male early career professional and sit him down and point out, you need to drop the arrogance a bit. It's not working for you. You're really smart. You're really good at what you do, but you're tending to isolate people because of the way you're treating other people. And you don't have enough experience to be that arrogant, trust me. So I think that in being the kind of leader Jim's been, it's so rounded that I think that also helps that when he makes that comment and really elevates that early career professional, it's because it's not one-sided. He's not on a mission. He lives his life that way, and the feedback is rounded. And I think that they know that and appreciate that. And I think it gives women a lot of room around Jim, or did in his career, to really stretch out, to take an assignment that they might not have otherwise, to take a task that was daunting because they didn't know if they had all the skills. But I watched time after time, they took it. They took that senior job because Jim said, you can do this. And I think, and it didn't have to be a man saying that. I don't think. I really don't think. And I think at the same time, I think the time's right. I mean, us men leaders, it's the time's long overdue, you could say, but I don't find a lot of juice in thinking or speaking that way. I think the time's now where senior women leaders, senior men leaders, we need to do everything that we know to do to make room for aspiring younger female leaders to keep going and take those risks. And I think it's happening. I'm seeing it happen more than ever. So this, to me, is an exciting time. And I think Jim left his organization in a really healthy place in that regard.
Well, and I would say that organization, they were always extremely ahead of the curve in promoting, all diversity, all genders. I've always felt very comfortable in that we were trying to do the best that we could to be able to bring all people on, because I've done it many times for young men as well. I mean, it's been a balanced approach for young leaders across the board.
Okay, before we run out of time, I just want to get to one last question. So, Jim, what you shared about your mom was really beautiful and telling.
Oh, thanks.
What would you say to those men who didn't have your family background about making a way for and empowering women?
Yeah, to me, it's I think I did an I&D workshop many years ago, and it was when we were first kind of introducing the whole idea of inclusion. And I had a young man in the organization ask me a question. He said, "Hey, Jim, I get the whole diversity thing. I'm not sure I understand all the benefits about inclusion." And to me, it was a bit of a softball. I think I mentioned, I played football as an offensive lineman, and the whole aspect about team being better than one individual. So I asked the young man, I said, "Hey, did you play sports in high school or college?" He said he did. I said, "What'd you play?" He said, "I played soccer." I said, "So I want you to just close your eyes and think about when your soccer team, when it was hitting on all cylinders. Everybody was in the right lanes. You're passing the ball. It's why they call it the beautiful sport. Think about how synchronous it was and how it all worked together, as a team. And then think about those times when it didn't work so well. You had 2 or 3 people that weren't on the same page. You weren't passing the ball. You weren't staying in the lanes. And how'd that work?" I mean, it's a bit of an easy question at the end of the day. To be able to, the whole strength of the entire team, the collective knowledge, the collective experiences, bringing that all together, I mean, it's almost a bit of a no-brainer at the end of the day. And so, my mom was this tremendous role model. I used to laugh. I don't know how in the world she didn't smother us 3 boys in our sleep, raising 3 boys, but she was the rock. And I got to see those strengths at the end of the day. Hey, DC, there's a great role model right there. And so it was always fun for me, being able to kind of explain that background and why it was important to me at the end of the day. But if you're going out there and you don't have that, just think about the collective strengths of a team and how well it can work together.
Well, thank you both. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Doug. We really
Anytime.
appreciate it. I know that you've left a lot of people with being inspired, feeling inspired, and with some key takeaways that they can build on from here. So thank you guys
Great.
for your time. Thank you all, audience, for jumping on here for the live Q&A, and we appreciate you. We'll see you
Great.
tomorrow morning
Stay safe,
for
everybody.
the
Jim,
keynote at
thanks.
9 a.m.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Anytime, Doug. You know that, brother, for you.
All right.
Anytime.
Beautiful.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Thanks, Melissa.
Bye.